Hey everyone, Mukluk here. So my son told me he recently watched Jaden Animation's tier list of all the Pokemons and which ones were S tier, A tier, B tier, and stuff like that. And he's like, why don't you do a tier list? And I was like, I don't know. That feels like really easy content. I don't know if I would want to watch something like that. And he's like, oh, okay. And a single tear went down his cheek. So, yeah, this is my tier list of the 90 games that I played last year. Oh boy, buckle up. That's right, the moment none of you have been waiting for. So we've got a few different tiers here. We've got S tier games that hooked me. Very rarely will games go in this tier. They have to be just top of the line. A, I finished the game and I did love it. A, I finished it. It was fun. C, I finished it. D, I could not make myself finish it. E, I refunded it. The last one is a special one. It's early access or bugs stopped me, so I couldn't see the whole thing. So yeah, we got a lot here. So this is what I did is I went to sullygnome.com, which is a website that has a whole bunch of stats, and I was like, show me every game every section on Twitch I streamed in 2022. And this is them. This is them. Barring one or two small mistakes, this is them. So let's just jump right into it. Poppy Playtime. Poppy Playtime was a game that was like 1 hour long. And then there was Poppy Playtime 2. And I did that one as well, and that was like another couple of hours. It was fun. It was fun. It was pretty clear near the end of it that they were like adding characters in just to sell merch, which is kind of weird feeling. But the first one, especially for a game that was like 45 minutes, like, oh my God, that was a great setting for like a new world, a new franchise. And I do hope that they eventually make Poppy Playtime 3. I am eager to play it. Let's see, Inscription. Finished it and loved it. Absolutely loved it. This is a game where you think you're playing a game like Slay the Spire, and then you're not all of a sudden. Like, it is this fun little game with like cards and stuff like that, but it drastically changes a couple of times on the way through, and it's like there's this incredible like mystery and a whole bunch of hidden stuff. And there's still very fun gameplay that changes dramatically going through the whole thing. So that was a very, very fun game. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Overlord. Overlord is an older game, to be fair. However, it's a game where you summon minions and send monsters to do your bidding. I thought that I was going to love it just because of what it is. I have to just put this in the finished it tier. It was a cool concept that it had some of the worst controls I've ever seen. I was constantly like, I'd have one minion carrying a bomb and I'd be trying to get it like, okay, go from here to here. And then like the other minions would come over and get destroyed by the bomb. And it was just like, I was fighting the controls more than the game itself. So I had a lot of problems with Overlord. Rogue Trader. I got into the early access to play the alpha. I'm actually in the early access again. I could play the beta right now if I wanted to. So it's not done yet. What I've seen looks very, very good, but the game is not finished, so I don't think it's fair to rank it in anything special. So I'm just going to put it down in the early access category. Oh boy, Dragon's Dogma. All right, time to make an entire franchise angry at me. I couldn't make myself finish it. So just to show it, hold on a sec. Dragon's Dogma. I did play 26 hours. I tried, guys. I tried. I played 26 hours of Dragon's Dogma. And there is a point in the game where you have to like jump down this pit and you can like grab onto ledges to go to different areas. So it's one of the worst transportation systems I've ever seen, but that's fine. And you go into these different areas and you got to kill monsters and get this like rare bauble. And you need like 60 of them or something to proceed. And I was like going through these passages and ended up accidentally stumbling into the hardest optional boss in the game. Got wiped by that a bunch of times. Go to another passage, managed to get one of the baubles I need, and I wait there and find out the stuff only respawns like every 45 minutes or every day or something. So I was like, all right, I got to go to other passages. And I played for hours and managed to only get a few baubles. And I was like, this is awful. Like, it was just this massive time sink before you could proceed with the main story of the game that's around, 20 something hours into the game. And someone else was like, oh, hey, why don't we use the hireling system? And basically they put a whole bunch of baubles on their hireling and wanted me to hire their mercenary, and it would trade them over to me. And we fought with the system trying to get that to work for like a week before we finally gave up. Additionally, some of the writing was just absolutely awful in that game. It was like There was this one part where the queen asked me to visit her. I go to visit her, and the king walks in, and I'm like, oh hey, she was about to give me a quest or something, and she's like, this man, he's trying to accost me, and I'm like, what? And the king like throws me in prison and tortures you. You're getting whipped, and I'm like, yo, I had nothing to do with this lady. I thought I was just here picking up a quest. And you manage to break out later on, and you're running, and I run out of the city, and then I realized the next step of my main story as I was like, talk to the king. I was like, oh god. So I just ran for my life and escaped like 30 guards. The whole city was after me. I turn around, I walk right back inside, and they're like, oh hey Billy, welcome back. And I'm like, hi, we good? And they're like, yeah, we good. And I'm like, okay. I go to the king, and I'm like, hey. And he's like, oh hey, did you finish taking care of the crops I seem to do? And I'm like, yeah. He had no memory of what had just transpired, and I was just like, what the heck is this? Really, the main good thing I could say about the game is, like the monsters with like, like the manticore that had like the goat head and the lion head and the snake tail, and each one had a different hit point bar, and you could like grab it and try to climb onto it to stab certain parts. Like the combat, very good. Everything else, I couldn't finish the game. Let's see. Dying Light. I finished it. Dying Light, I finished it. I played Dying Light when Dying Light 2 was out, and I was going to play Dying Light 2 if I had fun with Dying Light 1. But I didn't like it enough to play the sequel. If Dying Light 2 is watching this, I can be bribed, but so far I just, it was like, it was fine. It was fine. And then that's kind of it. Had a few bugs. Most of it was bug free. I had a couple of times I just fell through the world, but it was fine. Let's see. Have a Nice Death. Have a Nice Death, I played in early access, but I'm actually going to put it in It Was Fun. It was solid. The game's fully out now. I think there's one boss, which is Life, that was added to the game since I last played it. I cleared the whole game in early access, which ended with the water lady. She's like the aspect of like natural disasters. And it was a lot of fun. It's a roguelike. You die a lot. You get used to it. You get better. You get good. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. My successful run where I cleared the whole game, I had the most broken build. I got this thing, and it was like every time you get hit, your damage is increased by 1. And then I had another thing that was like whenever you get hit, heal for 5 damage. And then I managed to find some mosquitoes that kept hitting me for 1, healing me for 5, and increasing my damage. And I just let them hit me and stacked it up to like, to the point where I could like 4-shot bosses. So it was kind of like the dream run, It only happened once, but yeah, it was pretty crazy. Chorus. Finished it, and it was fun. Finished it, and it was fun. Chorus was a flight game. You're flying through space. You're in a starship. Most of it. The story was pretty good, and the gameplay was very fun. And it had a few features. I've only played 2 space simulator games in the last like 10 years. One was Chorus, the other was Everspace 2. And in Everspace 2, there was a couple of features that from Chorus I was like, man, I wish those were here. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Loved it. There's so many memes. Yeah. The memes? There's so many memes from that game that have made it around the internet. I was like, I gotta see what this is about. I played it. It was goofy. The controls could have been better. On mouse and keyboard, some of the controls, like even once I figured out what to do, sometimes I couldn't make it happen properly, but got through it. Additionally, the parrying in that game. It was like there was a boss that was a robot dog, like 3 or 4 boss fights in, and you get to that dog, and it was like I could not get it to parry, and it was like up until that point I didn't have to parry, and then that fight it was like almost impossible to get past it without being able to parry. So it's like that fight forced parrying down your throats. You died like 100 times. It was very, very frustrating. But then once I figured out that I was like, oh, just mashing this key, it was like, shift space click or something stupid, but it's like if I just mashed it 100% of the time parried. There was no timing involved, and then I one-shot every single boss in the game after that. But the story, impeccable, amazing, boost goose, it was so good. Orcs. ORX Orcs. Bugs stopped me. I did a sponsored stream for them. It was fun. I got like 2 hours in. I finished the first campaign, was supposed to unlock a new faction to start the second campaign, and it didn't unlock the new faction. Periodically over the next 2 weeks, because usually even when someone sponsors me to play a game, I do finish the game later in my own time. This was a time that I couldn't, and after a couple weeks I stopped trying. So there was just a major bug that stopped me from progressing. It was not affecting everyone, but it was affecting some, including myself, and I couldn't keep going. I couldn't keep going. Okay. Supreme Commander. Finished it. It was fun. Supreme Commander is an older game. It is meant to be like the spiritual successor to Total Annihilation. Total Annihilation is a game that consumed massive chunks of my childhood. I loved it so much. Like when StarCraft 1 was big, I was playing StarCraft 1, but also really loving Total Annihilation. Supreme Commander was like the sequel to that sort of, and I gotta say, it was fun. It was fun. I don't think it lived up to TA. So there's Total Annihilation, Supreme Commander, and Planetary Annihilation. Planetary Annihilation is fun, but very shallow game. It gets kind of repetitive extremely quickly. This one was fun. The game was so slow though that I was like, thank goodness this game has a speed slider. I was playing it on ×8 speed, and you're just using super slow, almost, super slow, heavily armored troops. But on ×8 speed, it didn't feel that bad, and I was just like, slow, unstoppable crawl across the map to victory. Okay, Hello Puppets Midnight Show. Got this one for free from the company that made it. Very kind of them. I was expecting some kind of spooky game, like Five Nights at Freddy's or something, and we got that for like 30 minutes, and then it went into this weird gameplay loop, and it was like, okay, you go into this area and you got some objectives to do, and there's a puppet chasing you, and then occasionally you hide in a cabinet, and once it passes, you go out and try to complete the objectives some more. And when you finish it, it was like, okay, now you've done that 1 of 5 times. You need to do that whole sequence 4 more times to proceed with the story. And I was like, no thanks. Like, I didn't like that sequence enough to replay it, just for the story. The story was the most engaging part of it, and it was like walled behind doing those things on repeat. Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. I'm torn between fun and loved it. I'm gonna put it in loved it. It was love, and I played Stanley Parable and Ultra Deluxe back to back. They were very fun. Most people in gaming know about the Stanley Parable. It's a game where you play as Stanley, and there's a narrator telling you what to do, and you can follow what the narrator says, or you could just ignore it and the narrator gets mad and just go off the rails from there. And it's a game that you play over and over and over and over, and you see all the different endings. It was a very enjoyable experience. Both of them were. Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I'm gonna say now, these are part of a trilogy. There's first of all, my community convinced me to try the Assassin's Creed games. I tried to play the first one, but we could not get it to run in any way, shape, or form on my system. So I watched a video that recapped it, and then I went into 2. Now, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations are a 3-part trilogy. I liked 2. I liked Brotherhood. I did not like them so much that I'm so eager to play Revelations that I put it ahead of all these other things. So it's like someday I'll go back and play Revelations, the 3rd part of the trilogy, but it was fun, but I'm not like itching for it so bad that I'm like, oh, well, D4 just came out, but I'm in the middle of Revelations, stuff like that. So I'm just going to say they were fun for me. Let's see. Batora. Batora was fun. So Batora started off as a sponsored stream. I did a 2-hour sponsored stream for them, and then I finished the whole game. It was, the full game is Batora Lost Haven. By the way, every single one of these games, nearly, is on Mukluk Plays if you want to watch the full playthrough of these. Batora was an action RPG, but it had a lot of story. So it's like you're doing an action RPG like half the time, the other half of the time you were talking to people. But it was fine. The story was pretty good. It was a little cheesy, but I would say fun. I would say it was fun. State of Decay. State of Decay, hold on, is that the right... I might have gotten the wrong picture. I think I played State of Decay 2, so this is supposed to be State of Decay 2. It took so long to download all these pictures. State of Decay 2, one of the people that worked on the project was a fella who used to work at ArenaNet. Now, I have a few back and forth conversations with people at ANET because of the Guild Wars 2, and he was like, hey, I think you might like this new project I worked on at this new company. Would you like a free key? I was like, sure. So he sends me a copy, and it was fun. I played through the whole game. Basically, zombie apocalypse. Gather resources, try to keep a group of people alive, build up an outpost, do quests nearby, like defeat all the zombies at a gas station so to get access to a source of gasoline. Defeat the zombies in this area to be able to make like a field, stuff like that. It was a zombie survival game with like you don't really have a main character. You have a group, and you're trying to keep the group alive. But yeah, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. Let's see. AI Somnium Files. Oh man, I really tried, mainly because of Julia. So Julia in our community was like, you would like this, you would like this, you would like this. So Flu Girl also loved it, and I felt pressured to try it. And I went into it, and it was just like, I like anime, okay? I do. I'm a weeb sometimes. The story writing for this, to me, was so bad. It was so bad. Like, there was this cop that let this like little girl blackmail him like 4 times, and he had like such easy ways out, and I was just like, why are you allowing this to happen? And then like you get through the game, it is super cheesy stuff, and you get to the end of it, and then it's like, wrong ending, bad ending, and it goes back like 8 hours of gameplay, and you got to replay from that point to try to get a different ending. And at that point I was like, hell no, and I put it down. So I just could not get into it. There was a whole group of people that are like, you gotta play this one and then the sequel, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm just not getting into this. Dishonored ended up getting the evil ending. I found that the game was much easier when instead of sneaking past, so I did it. I thought this was like an assassination game. I didn't realize this was supposed to be like a stealth game, and the good ending is when you sneak past everyone and don't kill anyone. I was just like, man, like there's stealth and there's Russian stealth. Russian stealth is no one sees you. Russian stealth is no one alive sees you. As I just took everybody out. I got this spell that summoned a swarm of rats, so they even ate the bodies so that there was no evidence. And I was just rat swarming everyone. And I went all the way to the end of the game, and I got the worst ending for basically starting a famine in all of Europe. And, there's just so many deaths. Like, people were terrified to go in the streets, and I was just like, whoops. So then we watched the YouTube video of the other endings. But it was a very fun game. I was playing it like it was a shoot 'em up instead of a stealth game, so whoopsie daisy. Let's see. Oxygen not included. I'm gonna say, I don't know if finished is the right word. I don't know if you ever finish Oxygen not included, but I will put it under the loved it category. I have played a lot of Oni. Let me pull up the evidence here. 240 hours. I always get to like the part where your structures are starting to creep out into space and then constantly getting destroyed by meteors and having trouble with that. And then I see people online that have these weird builds where they're like turning doors sideways and hovering them in the air to protect their base, and I refuse to do that because it looks cheesy as hell. But I will say, a very, very fun game. Colony survival sim. Love it. Celeste. It was fun. I know Celeste has a huge following. I cleared the game, went into some of like the DLC stuff that was added later, cleared some of it, but it started getting like just insanely difficult. But I cleared the base game, and it was fun. Amazing music and storytelling. The gameplay was something else, kind of outside of what I love, but I got through it, and it was an enjoyable experience. Crypt of the Necro Dancer. I don't know if it's fair to put it in the couldn't make myself finish it category, because that sounds negative. So Crypt of the Necrodancer, you play through the game as this girl, then you play through the game as like, her mother or her father, and then the other one, and then another character, and eventually you play through it with her grandmother, and the grandmother has 1 hit point. So also you if she ever does anything off beat, because like the game is just like dun 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 dun, left, up, right, up, down, left, up, right, up, down. Like there's a beat, and if you hit any key off beat, she dies, and you need to go through the levels. You need to get through the dungeon. Not only fighting like left stab, right, left stab, right. You got to get through the dungeon, through combat, and stay on beat without making a mistake for, I don't know, like 10 to 15 minutes. I tried it for a few hours, and I was like, this is going to take me days. So I ended up stopping there. But I did get all the way to that point, which was 15 hours in, and I had a lot of fun. So although I didn't finish that super ultra hard mode experience for the last thing, I did greatly enjoy my time there. So I will put it under the loved it, even though I wasn't able to beat the 1 hit point challenge run. Okay, Hell is Others. Hell is Others, it was all right. The game, I did a sponsored stream for them. And I'm gonna be honest, they don't know this. I had a misunderstanding of what type of game it was. It was kind of like a Fortnite game. It was a battle royale. Except what it is, it's kind of Cthulhian, so that was kind of cool. But what it is like you go down into a city at night and everyone else besides you looks like monsters. But then there's also NPC monsters running around. So sometimes you don't know until the monster pulls out a gun that it's another player. And you basically, you loot things and you grab weapons and stuff like that. And you can occasionally, you're in like a lower city, an elevator will appear, and people can run for that, and one person can take the elevator to go back to the upper city and get out, and they stay alive, and they take whatever loot they had out of there. And of course, if you die, you get no loot. So I'll just say, like, I played 2 hours of it for the sponsored stream, and then that's it. I didn't really feel a desire to go back. So I'll just put it under couldn't finish it. It was kind of cool, but, you know, battle royales just aren't really my thing. I mean, what do we do next? Call of Cthulhu. This is, of course, a horror game. It's spooky. Like many horror games, there's multiple times I was yelling at the protagonist, like, what are you doing? Why don't you just do XYZ? Why are you doing that? But overall, it was a pretty cool ride. I will say it was fun. It was fun. State of Decay 2, I think, so I haven't played both State of Decay, so I think this is supposed to be here instead. So I've never played State of Decay 1. So we're just going to put that down there. That one was included by accident, apparently. Okay, Outer Wilds. Time to piss off another fan base. I refunded that. So Outer Wilds, as you go into the game, as you play into it, you're just minding your own business, and then you just suddenly die. And if you're indoors, you don't know what happened. If you're outdoors, the freaking sun exploded. And you're like, okay, I did something wrong, I guess. And you start playing again, you're wandering around, trying to do something different, and then you die. Okay, so I start playing again, I go somewhere different, I start trying to, get into it, I'm like reading stuff, and then I just die. And I'm like, what is going on? And everyone's like, oh yeah, every time the sun explodes, time resets, and you need to get to the bottom of the mystery in between the deaths. And it was honestly just a very frustrating experience. Like, I'm not saying people have to like what I like. I'm not saying I have to like what other people like. I know this game has a huge fan base that really love it. I played it for a while. I could not fathom why people were enjoying just constantly dying over and over and trying to force some gameplay time in between deaths and respawns. Yeah, so I ended up refunding that before I hit the 2-hour mark on Steam. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, I'm torn between fun and loved it. Hellblade was about... So Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is about a woman that's got severe psychotic mental illness, is what the wiki says. And the bottom line is, like, she hears voices in her head and sees things that may or may not be there. And she's going through this thing. Her husband has been killed, and she's trying to get his remains to a certain place. And she's carrying his remains, or his head, and she's hearing voices in her head, she's seeing things, and it's like, okay, is this a fantasy game with like gods and demons, or is this just like a normal Earth and this lady is just seeing things and you don't know? So it was a wild trip, and I know that they had... Like, I saw the making of the game, and it was insane. Like, they got actual mental patients, people that suffered from the same stuff that their character suffered from to play the game. And they, one of them was like, yeah, I don't see anything weird about this game. And all the game devs looked at each other, and they were like, does that mean we did really good or really bad? Like, they didn't know, because they had just nailed it. Like, they got a bunch of doctors to help them make the game to make sure it was, like, not insulting in any way, shape, or form. It was, like, true to what they were trying to do. So that was wild. And it has a sequel coming out, and I am eager to play it. The Looker is a game that's like 45 minutes long. It is the sequel to... Sorry, I misspoke there. It is like a parody of a game called The Witness. The Witness was a good game. The Looker basically makes fun of it in a very immature humor, and it's just, it's a spoof. It is a spoof. It's a less than an hour long. I remember laughing a lot, and yeah, I loved it. I finished the 1 hour game and I loved it. Balloons, S tier. This freaking game. Hold on a second. So Balloons, I have played for 321 hours. So that's a lot of time. I love that game. It's a very simple game. You put down monkeys, you pop balloons, but it has a crazy amount of depth. There's people that are trying to do world records, because the levels go on forever if you keep going. But of course, at some point, you've covered the whole map and the highest level of towers, and it's still not enough, right? So people are constantly tweaking things, trying to set world records. They get to like wave number 1,400, stuff like that. I usually get to wave 300 or 400, and the game starts lagging out so bad that I stop there. But it's a lot of fun. I keep playing it. They did a new update recently where they added a beast handler tower, where the guy's like a monkey that like sends dinosaurs and birds and whales to attack things. Yeah, it's a silly little game, and I love it. Tunic, refunded, but for technical issues. issues. The game requires a controller to work. I'm very much a keyboard and mouse player, but I have a controller for when I have to use it. And I could not get the controller to work with Tunic. It was constantly making the controller vibrate. So I ended up going to the store and buying a new controller, thinking something was wrong with the controller. And it happened again, but only with Tunic. So it's like something in that game was just making any controller I plugged in go absolutely crazy. I don't know if it was my system or the game itself. I did Google, I found other people with the same issue, and I gave up on it. So I ended up refunding it. I barely got to play like 20 minutes. Let's see. Spooky's HD Jump Scare Mansion New Renovation. I finished it. I don't know. Dude, okay. Someone recommended this to me. It's literally you're running through a place, like open door, next room, open door, next room, open door. Occasionally like a cardboard thing pops out and spooks you. It was such a derpy little game. I finished it. Bullets per minute. So I recently did a review of Metal Hellsinger, and in the game Metal Hellsinger, or in the review for it, I mentioned if you liked bullets per minute, you would love this. Bullets per minute was a game where you were fighting and shooting and jumping and dodging on a beat, but it was like playing Doom outside of that. Very fun game. I enjoyed it. I did finish a full playthrough of it. Excuse me. It is a roguelike, so you can go through it as many times as you want, but I finished that. Let's see. Risk of Rain 2. I'm not sure where to put this. It was fun, but I felt like I didn't really have anything to make me keep playing it. Like Risk of Rain 2, I did a sponsored stream for them, and then I kept playing it for a few more hours, but it doesn't really have, it's a roguelike. You play it as many times as you want. So I cannot say I finished it. It was fun, but there was just a million other games that looked more fun to me that I was playing more. So I'm putting this one in, I couldn't finish it, but not in a bad way. I'm putting this here just because, you know, it was just like, there was no story or anything. It was just like, you go and see how far you can get, die, start over, go and see how far you can get, die, start over, repeating. And so, I mean, that was it. It was fun, but I did not finish like a full run. I love you, Colonel Sanders, a finger-licking good dating simulator. I did this because we had a stretch goal during a charity event. I said, if we make this much money for charity, I'll play a dating sim. And it came down to people trying to vote on either Hatoful Boyfriend, which is a game where you play pigeons that are in love, or I Love You, Colonel Sanders, a finger-licking good dating simulator. We ended up playing Colonel Sanders one. I thought it was going to be dumb and cringe. I named my character Daddy Mukluk, so all the characters in the game called me Daddy. And partly because of that, and partly because of the game itself, we were wheezing with laughter. My sides were in orbit. I had tears. It was just a few hours long, and it was absolutely hysterical. It is free on Steam. If you want some laughs for a few hours, I strongly recommend go play it, or watch my playthrough of it on Mukluk Plays. Song of Horror. Oh man, I'm right on the line here, and I'll tell you why. I want to put it in fun. I'll tell you why. So horror games, I very much play to make basically for the joy of my audience, not because I just love horror games. This one was fine. It was a horror game. Had some cool puzzles. It reminded me of playing the old King's Quest games where you find an item and then have to find how you use that item somewhere else. Some items could be combined in your inventory and you might not realize that for a while. Things like that. However, the ending, the last half hour was... Anyone who watches Doctor Who, you know how in a season finale something crazy happens, and it always is like they show a lot of these breadcrumbs they left in like all the episodes up until the finale, and it all comes together in some huge thing, and you're like, oh my god, I didn't see that happening. That was Song of Horror. The ending was like a whole bunch of breadcrumbs that you didn't realize had been getting laid out all came to fruition, and it was just insanely good. It was so good. Like, it was like good game, great ending. Vampire Survivors. Okay, so Vampire Survivors, I've played 41 hours. I gotta say, I love it. At this point, there's another DLC I haven't cleared, but before that, I had cleared it and gotten like the unlocks and stuff. Very fun game. It has no right to be as fun as it is for a game where you only press WASD. It has no right to be that fun for just WASD. So I'm gonna put it under loved it. All right, where is the other? I want the two Plague Tale games to be together. There's one of them, there's Requiem. I thought I did both of them back to back. Oh, there it is, it's right there. Okay, so Plague Tale Innocence and Plague Tale Requiem. I have to put those under loved it. These two games is one of those, like, they stood out, and it's like sometimes I have trouble remembering this stuff, right? Like, you know, I play so many games that sometimes I'm like, which one was that? And then I go watch like a few seconds of my replay, and I'm like, oh, that's what it was. That's right. That's never gonna happen with Plague Tale. Plague Tale was so unique It is a game where you're trying to stay alive, and there's a tidal wave of rats. And a whole, why are they coming after you? They seem to be chasing you. What's going on? The story was so good. It was the music was just fire. It was the Requiem. The second one was open. There was like a cliffhanger thing. They could easily make a third game with how they ended that, but at the same time, they did a good job closing out the second story. But they could make a third game. Fantastic experience. Wild ride. Is so good. So good. You watch it or play it. So good. Helltaker. Helltaker, loved it. Dude, this little game, is this little free game on Steam, ended up making an entire fandom. And it was like, a guy who goes into hell, solves puzzles, and he's trying to get a harem of demon girls. It's as silly as it sounds. Like, instead of Cerberus being a three-headed dog, it's just like 3 guard women that just share emotions. It is so very funny. Lots of laughs. It's like 3 or 4 hours long. We played that one. Enjoyed every minute of it. Let's see. Okay. Crossfire Legion. This game, I don't know whether to put it in. It was kind of fun. Okay, I'm going to put it in finished it, but here's the thing. The game, it wasn't an early access, but the story's not done. It cliffhangered, and they very clearly, hey, we're going to add more to the story later. I'm going to say I finished it. It was a bit fun, but it very much struck me as an RTS that is not going to hold the test of time. Like, I couldn't even do, like, queue up unit movements, like move here, then hold shift, then also move here, go into siege mode, attack this. You couldn't, like, queue up stuff like that. It was a fun little game, but I don't think it's going to hold the test of time as far as RTSs goes. But for the story, it was good. For the story, it was good. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Oh, baby. Hooked. Loved it. I did 1 full playthrough of the game as well as the DLCs and got 130 hours out of it. That game, I started off as a druid, got mad at people, started learning dark magic, and ended up as a lich with thousands of undead, including my animal companion, which was a saber-toothed tiger, was an undead saber-toothed tiger by the end of it by my side. It was crazy. I don't know of another game that let me be a lich druid. So that was a lot of fun. Torchlight 3, finished it, it was fun. Not as good as Torchlight 2. I've played Torchlight 1, 2, and 3. 1 was good, 2 was, 3 was good. Just to show that, if I go to Torchlight 1, 11 hours, Torchlight 3, 31 hours, Torchlight 2, 242 hours. They didn't quite capture all the greatness of the next one. I think they're making that Torchlight Frontiers game or something like that now. Got my eye on it because I'm a fan of the franchise. But Torchlight 3 was fun. It was fun. I finished it. It was fun. Void Train. Played it in early access, so I'll put it there. It was fun, but ended up getting quite repetitive. So in Void Train, let's see, how long did I play that for? So 24 episodes. So I maybe played it for 12 hours. And after the first few hours, it's largely the same thing on repeat. But I don't know what they've added to the game since release, so I'm just going to put it in. It was an early access. But it was a fun thing. They gave me a free code to it. So I was like, yeah, I'll try it. And I liked it for a while and then put it down. Nier Automata. Oh my gosh. The Guild Wars 2 would sell so many skins for Mechanist mechs if they let you get the robot girl from this game as the thing. I'm torn between fun and loved it. It's right on the line. I'll put it as loved it. I'll be a little generous here, but it was a fun game. There was a few moments that were frustrating. Like, it would force you to do a boss fight in camera down mode, like where you're looking at the top of your head, and you had to like jump over tripwires, but it was hard to see them because you were facing straight down at the ground instead of, at a, more normal sight. There were some areas where it became 2D and it was like a side scroller. And everyone's like, yeah, they do that a lot. The makers of this game do this a lot. Aside from that, most of the game was enjoyable. It was very abstract. Some people in chat had to help me understand the story, but it was a lot of fun and we did clear the whole thing. And yeah, it was great. And some of the little things at the end, again, the breadcrumbs laid along the way was incredible at the end of it. Darksiders 3. I played Darksiders 1 and Darksiders 2 before I became a streamer. I played Darksiders 3 on stream and it was fun. It was fun, cleared the whole thing. That's really all I've got to say about it. It was a fun game. If you're interested in seeing the playthrough, again, it's on Mukluk Plays. I think Darksiders 2 was my favorite one because you played Death in that one, and I'm an edgelord. But the third one was fun, and we played, was it Wrath? Fury. I got her name wrong. We played Fury in that one, and you had like the big whip, whereas Death had the scythes, War had the sword, and then was it Strife had the guns. But you mainly use the whip and go through the game. And yeah, it was just a continuation of the earlier story. So, it was basically chapter 3 in the story. It's pretty cool. Last Epoch. Although it's in early access, I gotta put this in S tier. This game, Last Epoch, is incredible. Like, I've done 90 hours of this game and it's in early access. This game is what I wish Diablo 4 was. That sounds pretty savage. Like, playing Diablo 4, there's so many features. I'm like, oh my god, I wish they had done what Last Epoch did here. So yeah, Last Epoch, it's an action RPG. It's about time travel. So like, you might get to a cliff and then you might go back in time to a time where it wasn't a cliff there, or there was a bridge. You might go to a building where it's locked. So you go forward in time until it's ruins, walk inside, get the key, walk back out, go back in time to when it's locked, unlock it, go in and get the loot. Like, it's crazy. The story is really great. It's compelling. At the same time, the gameplay is awesome. It's an action RPG where every individual skill has a skill tree, not an overwhelming one like Path of Exile, like a modest one, but it allows a lot of customization without drowning you. It is so much fun. So yeah, S tier for that one. Kina Bridge of Spirits. Oh boy, we've actually got, hang on a second. We've actually got merch from them. This is a rot, and they've got beans. But Kina Bridge of Spirits, loved it. It was an interesting mix. The open world was kind of like Breath of the Wild, but then when you get in combat, it's like Dark Souls all of a sudden. Like, some of the fights were incredibly challenging, but very, very good. Yeah, it was a fantastic game. I did a sponsored stream for them and then finished the whole game on stream, and my whole community just really, really loved it. And the company was really nice to us too. But yeah, I have to put that in the loved it category. It was wonderful. Untitled Goose Game. Everyone knows what this is. It's a meme in gaming. I'm gonna say I finished it and it was fun. There was some, going through it, the puzzles, some of them were frustrating. There was one or two I couldn't figure out and people helped me. All the rest I was able to do. And then honestly, the best moment was at the very, very end when you saw the, I'm just gonna say the reveal at the very end of the game. We laughed a lot at the reveal. It was a fun evening. It was a fun one evening. Steel Rising. So Steel Rising was trying to be the new Dark Souls. I am good, not exceptional at Dark Souls. I cleared Dark Souls 3 and all its DLCs. I cleared Elden Ring. I'm not the best, but I'm okay. Steel Rising, I felt was easy, but I did have fun. It was a fun game. You basically play this robot maid in a steampunk version of Europe, and there's been an uprising, and the queen sends you out to, try to stop her husband, the king. And you go out there and, you've got the power of the Autobots. You can like transform and stuff like that. It's like when you pick up a weapon, it just like transforms into your arm, and your arm would just like transform into a tire halberd and stuff when you needed it. But the upgrades and stuff, the art was amazing. The gameplay, a little easy for a game trying to be like Dark Souls. Some of the experienced Souls players cleared the game in like 8 hours. Tales of Iron. This was a 2D little roguelike game, and it was voiced by the guy who played the Geralt of Rivia, the Witcher, in the games. And so it was a very fun game, awesome narration. I'm gonna say it was fun. It was a fun game, got through it, it was enjoyable, and then I put it down, and I've only played it the one time, but it was a good run. Madison. It's tough to say that I had fun with horror games because I play them for my community to enjoy watching me squirm. This one, I will say, for everyone watching, was fun. Yeah, I'm gonna put it there. It was fun. It was fun. We got through the whole thing. I've got some horrific memories from it, which is exactly what they want me to have from these games. So yeah, there's so much to say about it, but it would easily spoil it, so I'm holding back on that. It's a spooky game. It's about a guy in a house, and he's got an adjoining house with his grandpa's house, and at the beginning, his dad is banging on the door, and his dad sounds like abusive, but he's like, what have you done? What have you done? And you're in this room, and it's like, okay, am I a serial killer? Like, what's going on? And you go through this connector into the other house where grandpa lives, and you find all this evidence that he was researching that says that you might be possessed by a demon. and then the story plays out from there. But it's got a lot of like flashbacks, a little bit of time travel, all kinds of crazy stuff. Very, yeah, it's quite spooky, quite scary game. Was not a letdown. RimWorld. Okay, y'all, I'm sorry. Hold on, we've got to do this one as a pair with something else. Stranded Alien Dawn. S tier. Stranded Alien Dawn, I did a sponsored stream for them when they were in early access. And since then, I have played 219 hours. I did a review video for this game even that came out recently and is now, it's on track to become the most popular review video I've ever done. And it is a game where it is a colony sim. You control people, you give them orders of things to do. You can just let them work on their own or manually take over. They occasionally get attacked and you have to deal with that. So there's combat as well. So you lay down traps, you know, make crops, make buildings, make shelves, put, you know, supplies on them, try to protect them, you know, stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people called it 3D RimWorld. So then I tried RimWorld. I played it for like 3 hours and the whole time I was just like, man, I wish I was playing Stranded Alien Dawn. It was fine, but there was so much that it was like if World of Warcraft made EverQuest more accessible to people with smooth brains, Stranded made RimWorld more accessible for mucklucks with smooth brains. So I ended up, you know, I tried this, didn't care for it, went back to this for another 200 hours and absolutely loved it. So I felt like, you know, I tried RimWorld, it wasn't for me. Tales of Berseria, my first anime freaking waifu game. So this game was sponsored by Shugo in our community. He basically did the top Patreon tier, which was he got to order me to play a game I would not normally play. We played it, we got through it. There was some incredibly cheesy moments, and it was also an incredibly long game. The controls were not great. It was a 45-hour game. The controls were not great. The story was pretty wild. I mean, it was an anime story, you know, power of friendship and all that stuff. I'm somewhere between, like, it was either low B tier, high C tier. I'll put it right there. I'll put it right there. Definitely, it was me trying something outside of my comfort zone, but we ended up finishing the whole thing. Deep Rock Galactic. Deep Rock Galactic. So I've actually only played this one time. During one of our big party streams, I played it with Noxxi and My Lotus and I think some other people. And I want to be honest, but the experience I had that day is I was just trying to keep up. Noxxi, I'm sorry, Noxxi. Noxxi was just moving so quickly. I was just frantically, like, just running to catch up the whole time, and I wasn't really absorbing anything else. So I was just like, I was really overwhelmed. So all I remember from that was I was playing the engineer, so I could make like the glue platforms and stuff. I could make a turret, but I was constantly out of ammo, so the turret almost never worked. And I was constantly just trying to catch up to them. So it's like they were doing fun stuff up there, and I was just running behind them the whole time. So like, it looks like a game that looks like it would be a lot of fun with friends, like Vermintide, stuff like that. But that's the only time I played it. So I'm just gonna say couldn't finish it because I only did like a single 3-hour session. I did, but you know, I do like Screaming Rock and Stone as much as anybody else. On that note, since we just talked about it, where is Vermintide? I just saw it. Vermintide 2, loved it. We have done a playthrough of all of the group content that's like the story on stream with me, Flute Girl, and a couple of the other mods, and we had a lot of fun with that. I enjoyed playing the Archer elf lady because she has an aura that if anyone on the team is below half health, they will very slowly heal up to half health, and that saved us so many times. Like anytime we got out of a fight where we were like 1 hit point the whole time, I knew that regen was keeping us alive, and I loved that feeling. That was fantastic. What is this? Warhammer 40k. Is that Inquisitor Martyr? Hold on a second. Yeah, that is Inquisitor Martyr. All right, see, this is one of those I need a quick refresher. Oh, this is the action RPG one. Okay, yeah, this was fun. This was a fun game. This was a fun game. I'll put it here. However, I will say I don't think it was a little clunky. It's not going to surpass Path of Exile or Diablo for ARPG fans, but it was fun and I finished the whole thing. It's one of the first Warhammer 40k games I played. In 2022, I played quite a few 40k games and learned a lot about the franchise. And that was one of them. So I'll put it in fun. Speaking of 40k, Darktide. I'm going to say loved it, but at the same time, I gotta point out that the community of Darktide did not love what they did at launch. I loved it the same way I loved Vermintide, but you know, like Darktide issued an apology, a public apology for like they released the store before releasing the content they promised to release, and they got reamed for it by the Warhammer crowd. because they were doing the typical greedy corporate crap. But the gameplay I did with the people I did it with, very, very fun. Evil Within 1 and 2. I have already mentioned that usually when I play horror games, I play them for the entertainment of my community, not because I myself love horror games. However, Evil Within 1 and 2 is apparently an exception to that. The first 30 minutes of Evil Within 1, I was like, yo, this is a very strong sell. I'm going to be shocked if you can keep this up. It's like you go into an asylum and I'm like, okay, we're going to be in this asylum fighting for our life for the next 8 hours, right? You go in there, you're looking on a security monitor, like who killed all these people? You go into the security booth, you look on the security monitor and you see a guy on the monitor like teleport behind a security guard and kill him. And you're like, what? Then he looks at the camera, teleports behind you in the room, and you're like, what? And then he knocks you out. You wake up in the basement, you're on a meat hook, and there's a guy, like, you know, sharpening a blade. You got to get loose, sneak out, get out of there, run for your life. There's a whole bunch of buzzsaws. You end up going down this slide into a pool of blood. You climb your way out. You manage to get out of the asylum. I'm like, wait, we're already out? Like, this is insane. And you start driving, and the city starts moving. Like, chunks of the city start moving like you're in the Inception movie. And I was like, what is going on? Like, the whole world was just hell on earth. So these two were horror games, but dang though, like they were a lot of fun. And the more than anything else, like more than the gameplay, the story had me. It absolutely had me. So I gotta put, you know what? Low A tier, because I don't love horror. I love entertaining my community, but I loved the story. So low A tier, even though they're horror games. Dungeons 3. Now I've got Dungeons 2 and Dungeons 3 both here. I'm going to put those both under loved it. Dungeons 2 and 3 is a game where underground, they're based on the old Dungeon Keeper games, where you carve out a dungeon and you make traps and stuff, and heroes and adventurers come in. You put like a fake treasure chest, but it's booby trapped, and they open it and it explodes, and then you drag their bodies off and turn them into skeleton warriors, and then they help attack the next group of adventurers. And eventually, when you get strong enough, you could send your army out into the overworld, where the humans are, and then try to take over the overworld. It's a very fun little RTS style game. Very simple compared to games like StarCraft. The narrator also kills it. The narrator's hilarious, and I very, very much enjoyed both of those games. Also played a couple of the Dungeons 3 DLCs as well. One Hand Clapping. Okay, so One Hand Clapping is a game where you control the character by singing. Again, there was a charity stream. One of the stretch goals was like, if you guys help me get this goal, I'll do that singing game. I'm gonna put it under I finished it, but I think my community would say they loved it because I was a train wreck. I could not hit the high notes. Like, if you want, for example, you would get to a point where you needed to make a bridge. And like, if you and like, it would like make a staircase. Like you're as you raise the notes, you'd make a staircase. I couldn't do it. I found after a while, we found that I could kind of do it by like humming or doing like a letter, like like that, and I was able to get through the game. But oh my god, it was embarrassing for me. Not planning on another playthrough of that. I finished it. It's there if you want to see the recording. Gloomhaven. I got this for free on Epic. Epic gives out free games every week. They're awesome for that. I had it on my wish list on Steam for ages, and I was like, oh, hell yeah. And we tried it. It's like, it's an RPG where you control different, like a party of heroes, but each of them can only move if you draw a card for that. It's like a card-based thing at the same time. It was just like, we spent the first hour doing the very first fight in the tutorial, the first hour. And it was like, sometimes I wanted to attack, but I didn't draw the attack card, so I couldn't attack. It was again, for me, I hated the combat system. And I was like, all right, guys, I'm really not having fun. I'm gonna stop. And a whole bunch of people in chat that had been quiet were like, oh, thank God. Like, I didn't realize that there's a lot of people in chat that were like, yeah, I was, trying to see if you like this or not. I didn't want to say anything. Mechanicus. Warhammer Mechanicus. It was fun. More because it was Warhammer 40k and the story was great than the gameplay. The gameplay was the exact same on every single map in the whole game. It got extremely repetitive, but the story was good and the story was fun. And I like the character customization. So I'm gonna say it was fun. Carrion. Carrion, you play a monster that's like going through the vents, and every person you kill, you absorb them into your mass and you become a bigger monster. It's an 8-bit game. It's not really gory or anything because it's like little sprites, but you go through the whole game and there's a bit of a twist at the end. But it's a very simple game, but it's fun, and you get to just basically play the personification of chaos for a few hours. That was pretty cool. Humankind, it looks like a great game for people who like Civilization, but that just wasn't me. I did a 2-hour sponsored stream for them. I played it. It was fun. I know a few people that bought it because of that. I didn't end up playing it past that point. So I'll just put it in, didn't finish it, and I'll just put that right there. Cult of the Lamb. I gotta put that in S tier. Cult of the Lamb is a roguelike, which I like, but I don't love them. But at the same time, when you're in town, it's like a cute little Farmville thing. And we ended up, recently, we went and played the brand new release of Cult of the Lamb. We played that. In total, we played 31 hours of it, but the brand new release that they did that added like artifacts and stuff like that. What was the name of it? Relics of the Old Faith. That was it. So we played Relics of the Old Faith just recently, had an absolute blast. I think the relics are a bit overpowered. I finished the final boss fight, started with 3 hearts, ended with like 27 or something. But yeah, it was a very fun game. It is a gem. Putting that in S tier. Amnesia Rebirth. This is the epitome of I played it to entertain my people. I'm gonna put it in I finished it. Scary game, crazy game, lady trying to get her baby back, and there's lots of monsters. If you want to see me be very uncomfortable, that's how Mukluk plays, just like all the others. I'm gonna put that in the I finished it tier. Stray. Stray, the game where you play Chip. A game where you play a cat and go through what appears to be a post-apocalyptic society and make a lot of friends. It has some very sad moments and some very happy moments. I'm gonna say I loved it. I did love playing Stray. That was great. It was a story from the perspective of a cat, and they did a really good job with it. Re8 Village. I specifically remember when I was playing this, someone in my chat was like, yo, this isn't a horror game, this is just Europe. But Re8 Village. So I've now played RE2, RE4, the remakes, and then RE7 and RE8. RE8 Village was, of course, you know, you're running from Mommy Lady Dimitrescu, but that's only chapter 1, then she's gone. She's not in the whole game. Like, everyone talks about her, but she was only in that one bit. It was a pretty fun game. I remember there was this one part that there was this boss fight where you fought this guy that was basically Magneto, so he could just control all metal, and then you just find a polymer tank or something that he couldn't control, and it was like, really? This seems really convenient. Like, it just seemed really stupid. And then you're using it, and it's just like a vehicle fight. And people in chat were like, "Oh yeah, these games always have a needless vehicle fight." And I was like, "Okay." So that ended up feeling like the stupidest part of the game. The rest of it was pretty rad though. So I played 7, and then played 8, and 8 continued the story of 7 essentially. We've also done the DLC for 8, which was Shadows of Rose. So I put it in. It was fun. It was fun. Lost in Random. Oh man, I smile looking at that. Lost in Random was a very interesting game. You play this little girl, and she rolls dice, and they determine, basically time would stop every time she rolls a dice during a fight, and you could like choose your next few actions. And then it's kind of like an action RPG while occasionally stopping time and tilting things in your favor. And at the same time, good story too. Very good story. So I'm gonna put that in loved it. That was wonderful. If they made another one, I would love to play it. It Takes Two. It Takes Two was a game I played on Father's Day with Gabe, my son. And one of you plays basically the little girl, like her parents are about to get a divorce, and she wishes on her birthday cake or something, like I wish this wouldn't happen, and they get both turned into toys. And they're trying to get back to normal in any way they can. And one of you plays the dad, one of you plays the mom. So since I'm Gabe's dad in real life, just to make it so that it was weird for both of us, he played the dad and I played the mom. And you go through the story. It's a game you have to play with 2 people, but if you buy 1 copy, you get the key for the other person to play it as well, because you need 2 people to play it. It was pretty cool. There was one part that was straight up horrifying, and I actually had to like pause and warn my kid. It was basically they came to the mistaken conclusion that making their kid cry would break the spell. So when they're shrunk, like all the toys are alive to them. So they basically like murder her favorite stuffed animal, which is begging them not to do it, to get the kid to cry to break the spell, but it doesn't work. And everything else in the game was an incredibly heartfelt tale, and it was fun, and it was smiles. That one small part of it though was kind of horrifying, but I played it with my kid and it was fun. I'll say I liked it more because I was playing with my kid than I did because of the gameplay itself, but the gameplay itself was good. Wandering Village. I got this key from the company. It was not a sponsored stream, but they gave me a free key. And we played through it. How long did it take me to finish it? It wasn't terribly long. One playthrough took me 8 hours. But basically you make a village on the back of this thing. And it could be cold, it could be hot. You can expand up here because there's a lot of room. This thing might be unhealthy. You got to keep it alive, which might mean like injecting medicine into it. Also, if you're like starved for food, you can carve meat out of its back. But of course, then it starts to hate you more. There's a lot of weird stuff you can do. If it gets like a fungal growth on it, you might need to run out and try to kill the fungus to keep your big buddy safe. It was very fun. It was like a village sim, and at the same time you're steering, and this guy's wandering around the world. So depending on like what it wanders into, like gas clouds and stuff, you might be in trouble. But it was a very fun game for 8 hours, and if they do add more updates, I'd love to revisit it. I'm gonna put it right there in the fun category. Aperture Desk Job. This game, Aperture Desk Job, was a game that was meant to introduce you to the Steam Deck. So if you play this on Steam Deck, it introduces you to everything. It's like a 30-minute game, and it's actually in the universe of like Portal, and it is hysterical. It is 30 minutes of comedy, very funny. Another one I strongly recommend either play or watch. My kid actually recommended it. I'm gonna put that in loved it. It was a fantastic half hour. Wonderful. Inside. So Inside is a little almost 2D game of a kid trying to get through this area. Like he's trying to escape what appears to be like a science facility. There's almost no talking in the whole game, and it's very abstract, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But you go through this game and you're just trying to break out from the inside. And I won't say any more than that. It is, again, it's one of those abstract games where it's like, you could get a lot from seeing the ending, or maybe not much at all. I looked up the ending to see what other people thought about it. It was very interesting. I'm going to say it was fun. I have to be vague there because it's so easy to give so much away. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So Valhalla, I did a sponsored stream for NVIDIA GeForce Now, and they wanted me to play any of their new games on GeForce Now. I looked at their new games and ended up picking Valhalla, played 2 hours of it. My community was hyped for me to finish it. So I was like, all right, I'll finish it. That ended up being 154 episodes, like over 70, almost 80 hours of gameplay. It was fun. However, it had no right to have the bugs that it did with how much that game costs. It was like every 5 to 10 hours, the game would just crash. And that wouldn't be as big of a deal, except for the fact that the game took like 3 minutes to launch. And it had, a few times like there was a critical NPC that had despawned in the world. I found bug reports of it online from years ago, never fixed. So I had to reload my game and replay hours to get back to the point where I was, where it had not despawned. There's a lot of small frustrating things that happened over those 80 hours. If I ignore the bugs, it was a fun game, and a game that you could easily sink 200 hours into, because after the first zone, when I realized that there was literally hundreds, possibly thousands of side quests, I started just focusing on the main story, and it was still like 80 hours. So I will say it was fun. Could have been up here if they had polished it, but they didn't. Elden Ring, loved it. I ended up playing the first part of Elden. Everybody knows about Elden Ring now. I played it on launch day, and I was spoiler free. So there's a lot of, for example, optional side bosses that I missed because I didn't know they existed. I just didn't come across them. And there was like the church where you learn the spells to do like, dragon attacks. I completely never found that until after I was done with the game. But I ended up going through like half the game is like a melee fighter with self-healing magic for in between fights. And then I tried sorceries, which, sorcery OP. I never went back. I was throwing meteors at dragons and stuff. It was fantastic. And I beat the whole rest of the game with sorcery. It was a lot of fun. God of War, Dad of Boy. My first God of War game. After I started playing this and I got really into it, I ended up watching like a 2-hour video on YouTube that explained what had happened in all the God of Wars up until that point. Wonderful. However, I only play on PC, so the next God of War game, I'm waiting for it to come to PC, and I would love to play it. Very much liked it. Actually, I might even put it in loved it. Some of you may have seen there was a funny video I posted of me fighting the Valkyrie Queen, which is one of the toughest fights in the game, and I wiped on it like 82 times, but I managed to get it, and it was very satisfying. I had to get better and get better and get better and get better. Finally, I memorized all of her 40 moves and then managed to kill her. Very fun. Guild Wars 2. No secret, I play a bit of Guild Wars 2, almost 8,000 hours. Last year, the big thing was End of Dragons released. And I think it's important to remind people that I became a content creator because I love Guild Wars 2, not the other way around. I already loved this game, so I'm going to put it in S tier. Still the best MMO for me. And I think I'm actually not sure if End of Dragons or Living World Season 4 is my favorite story chunk for the entire Guild Wars 2 game. It's one of those two. It's either Joko Kralkatorrik or the End of Dragons finale. One of those two. Iron Harvest. Very similar to Crossfire Legion. This was a fun game. It was an RTS, but it's a bit clunky to play. I don't think it's going to manage to beat games like StarCraft and Warcraft 3 as far as RTSs go if they don't like polish up the movements and stuff like that. But it was a fun game and I enjoyed it. I was only sad to see that the story wasn't done. Like it's not an early access, but it's like they're still doing updates to continue the story. So it's like you're playing it, and all of a sudden it's just like huge cliffhanger, and it's like, oh, okay. But the story was a lot of fun. It's kind of like a steampunk version of Europe many years ago during wars, and they've got basically steampunk mechs. But yeah, I'm gonna put it under. I finished it and it was fun, or I finished what was available in the game at that time. King Arthur Knight's Tale. This game plays like XCOM, but with knights and magic. It was absolutely fun, but very repetitive. Once you got going in the game, it was like the levels were not that different from one another. But I did go through the whole game, which was 56 hours. A lot of gameplay from one single playthrough. But the game, you see he's kind of like undead there. Essentially, it happens after the whole story of like the sword and the stone and all that. And then someone brings back King Arthur as like an undead monstrosity. The Lady of the Lake tries to stop it, and because of her intervention, you end up with like the soul of King Arthur's a monster, the bones of King Arthur's a monster, and just so on and so on. There's like multiple monsters that are each a fragment of him, and she brings back the only being that's ever been able to oppose Arthur, which is Mordred. And you play Mordred. So you actually play the bad guy brought back to life as an undead to stop the who was the good guy before. And over the course of your adventure, you can shape Camelot to be kind of a good place or like a tyrant place. Kind of like, and there's lots of upgrades you do in between missions to your city, just like how in XCOM you would upgrade your base of operations between missions. But yeah, it was a very fun game, maybe a bit long for what it was, but I did like it. Solasta. Solasta, I would say lower B tier. Solasta is based on D&D rules 5e. And playing it with friends is like playing Pathfinder or Neverwinter with friends. And we played it on stream. It was a lot of fun. That was when Flute made the friggin' charisma rogue, and no one realized until it was too late. She was a human shield. That was it. So we were playing that game, and it was a lot of fun. Some of the stuff that they did was really clunky, like giving bosses like extra turns and stuff like that. Like also, I think 5e, not because of Solasta, but just from what I know, I think 5e might be my least favorite. Like I played D&D 3 and 3.5. I played Pathfinder. I think 5e might be my least favorite of those. But Solasta was a fun game, especially because you could do the whole story multiplayer with friends. So we ended up, playing that with, we had one character named Twitch Chat that was just a dwarf that swore constantly. And we had one character that was me, and then Flute, and then like Moose. That's where the swamp thing started. But it was fun. It was fun. The Riftbreaker. We still play this every Monday on stream. The Riftbreaker. So Riftbreaker in 2022 came out with its first expansion, Metal Terror. Last week, they came out with their second expansion, which was Into the Dark. And they are both wonderful, and they both add a lot to the base game. And it has, it's 0.1% of players. Sometimes I do a bit of gaming. It has a lot of, customization. It has a lot of features that are added to the main campaign and the survival maps that you could play with Twitch chat integration that are added every time they do a content update. So Riftbreaker is the only game besides Guild Wars 2 I made a why play Riftbreaker explaining the appeal video for. It is just such a great game. They tried to combine RTS and an action RPG into the same game, and they did a really freaking good job. So yeah, S tier. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I loved it. That was fantastic. That's a game where you're basically playing a Borderlands game, but it's guns and magic. And Tiny Tina is basically the dungeon master over the game. It's like you occasionally will, like you're playing the game and it's like a normal game, but then you find like just like a wad of gum in your way or a giant Cheeto the size of a building. The humor is on point. It was fantastic, and I loved them incorporating magic. I like magic and fantasy more than I like like guns and stuff. So them mixing that in just really hit all the right buttons for me. V Rising. Oh man, I would have to say upper B tier, lower A tier. but I'll put it under, in 2022, I cleared everything that was in it, and it was fun. Right now, I'm in the middle of playing the V-Rising Gloomrod update, so I haven't cleared all the new stuff yet, but working on it. Chaos Gate Daemon Hunters. So Chaos Gate Daemon Hunters started off as another one of my introductions into Warhammer 40k. Played 48 hours of it. It's XCOM, but with the Warhammer troops. Forgive me, my mind is bouncing through so many games right now. It's XCOM with the Warhammer troops. So you're going through them, it's turn-based, there's dice rolling, there's good RNG, there's bad RNG, all that stuff, and you're trying to fight mainly the forces of Nurgle in this. But it was a very fun game, a bit slow, like any XCOM type game, but the animations were incredible, like them just like punching through walls and stuff. When they needed an opening, they just made one because these guys in these suits were so strong. It was a very fun game. They did release a DLC that I have hardly played at all, but the base game in 2022, I did finish the base game, and it was a fun experience. Okay, I saved these for last on purpose. State of Decay, remember, that was an accident. I have not played the first State of Decay. I meant to just have State of Decay 2 in here, and I included both. Mech Arena is technically a mobile game, but I did a sponsored stream for them, and it does play on PC. We actually had a lot of fun playing that. You could play it on like iPad, like my son would play it on iPad, and I would play it on PC, and we would actually play it multiplayer. But, you know, you pick a mech, you get to design it, like your right arm shotgun, left arm lasers, left arm artillery, whatever. Do you want legs or just a wheel on the bottom or tank treads, whatever you design your little mech. It was, you know, it's simplified Mech Warrior. And then you get thrown into an arena, 5v5 or 3v3 or whatever, and get more kills before the end. It was simple fun. It is a game where you could spend money on it. We didn't spend a dime. Did a sponsored stream for them and continued to play quite a bit of it over the next few weeks with my kid, and some people in the community kept playing it as well because we did like some community games. So it was legitimately fun. It was legitimately fun. Raid Shadow Legends. Oh my God. All right. So it's important for me to say that like 2 years ago, I think, I did a sponsored stream for Raid Shadow Legends, okay? And it's just like your favorite YouTubers do. And after that stream, I got hooked and I kept playing it. Like, unironically, there is a reason their advertising budget is so freaking insane. There is a reason that they can afford to have a freaking anime series out now. And it's because their game has a lot of people playing it. And I am actually level 100 in that game. I am at max level. I don't spend anything on it. I'm a free-to-play player for a long time, but it has been, don't tell Josh Strife-Hayes, but it has been my freaking third monitor content for a couple of years now. I actually love that game, and there is a massive community of people on our Discord that play it every single day. Every single day. Like, I would say the Guild Wars 2 section of our Discord is the one with the most traffic, and RSL is the second. So I have to put it in, like, I love this game. I played a lot. I don't spend any money on it. I don't recommend people play it if they have any kind of gambling habits, because like I can see the shop and just ignore it. If you can't do that, I wouldn't go near it with a 10-foot pole. But the rest of the game I have a lot of fun with. But I did that last because I know putting like anything below that, like I put that there, and like some Dragon's Dogma fan is going to just freaking lose their minds. Oh man, it's for that. It's because I explained earlier what happened with me and Dragon's Dogma. That's the reason I'm just kind of like, whatever about Dragon's Dogma 2 coming out, because of my experience with the first one. All right, so this was here by mistake. That's it. This is the 90 games, I think it was 90, that I played in 2022. And where I would rank them, or I should say that I streamed in 2022. You know, just hypothetically, if I ever click here to play, my lord, you know, that wasn't on stream. So this is the games I streamed in 2022. There you go, my very first tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and maybe we'll do one at the end of 2023.